Hi, and welcome to this quick tool review. This time around we have a bunch of interesting items to look at. First up is a product sent to me from a company, Vastfire, that sells on Amazon, and it's a portable, rechargeable, dimmable work light. And it's dimmable between 500 and 5,000 lumens. 5,000 lumens is pretty darn bright. And its color temperature is adjustable between 2700 and 5600 Kelvin. 2700 Kelvin is the reddish yellow warm light you get from an incandescent bulb. 5000 Kelvin is considered standard daylight color temperature, which is a lot bluer. 5700 is still a little bit bluer than that. It's rechargeable, has a 20 amp hour battery, and it'll run supposedly 5 hours on full brightness, which is very impressive. You know me, I'll always review lights. I never have enough light in my shop, especially when I'm shooting video. I can't afford to run AC cords all over the place. My shop is way too crowded already. So portable rechargeable lights are often a good option to get in there and light the item I'm trying to shoot at the moment. So I'll always review them, especially since I have a really warm spot in my heart for flashlights. Don't know why that is, but I'm addicted. This is how it arrived from Amazon. Let's open this package up and see what they sent. So it's double bagged for waterproof protection. It's kind of interesting. It kind of looks like Amazon didn't do this, so they may be an Amazon reseller. A lot of Amazon packages, this would have come in a box that was like 10 feet long and been banging around there like a BB in a boxcar. This is kind of form-fitting. Wow, nice case inside. I guess you know where it's made. They're proud to say it. I gotta say, some of the Chinese products are pretty impressive these days, so that's no longer the stigma it once was. I mean, I remember back when I was a kid, made in Japan was an item you would avoid. Not so anymore by any stretch. It's a really nice form-fitting case, and it looks like this guy is solar rechargeable. Also, comes with a USB-C cable. So looks like if you have any cell phone charger, you could plug it in there. It's nice that a lot of companies are starting to focus on 5-volt standard for charging items, because it means you'd have fewer and fewer unique power supplies you have to throw out when the product becomes no longer useful. You can keep the power supply for the next item you get, and I think that's great. So they're counting on you having the AC charger for this guy. It does not come with a charger on its own. That's probably not a make or break deal, because probably everyone has an older cell phone charger somewhere, but in case you don't, definitely something to be aware of. Flipping the light over, it also has a work stand, which I almost forgot to mention. The work stand is versatile. It's kind of a neat design. So it has a hook where you can hang it from things, or you can fold it down and use it on the ground. It also has 3 different locations where you can mount that stand for more flexibility. That's kind of interesting. Or you could mount it to something else if you want. It's designed to put a nut in here and a screw go through, and the nut will be held captive, and so you just tighten it down. The workstand itself is pretty flimsy plastic, so be careful when you're using it. If someone kicks this or steps on it, you might very well break it. I haven't tested that theory. Things I like about the design. The flatness of the illumination field is outstanding, and for doing videography, that's always something you're very interested in. Having hot spots in the video makes the camera expose for the bright spot and then underexpose all the other spots. Correcting a bright spot and making it diffuse, you waste a lot of light because you got to add a diffuser over it. And if you ever want to add one on purpose, it's easy to do just by adding another light pointing at one specific area. So I really like their light design on this. Another thing that's both a positive and a negative is the glass front. The glass front is fragile, so it can break, but it's very optically clear and will stay so for the lifetime of the product. If this were plastic, you would end up having this frosted and or crazed, which is cracked, because these are not actually really white LEDs. If you look closely here, you'll see that these LEDs have different colors in front of them. What these actually are is ultraviolet LEDs, like a lot of quote-unquote white LEDs are. And the ultraviolet light output hits a phosphor coating on the front of the LED, and that phosphor coating converts the ultraviolet light into white light which is actually not true white. It's a bunch of different spectral peaks across the visible spectrum that make it appear to your eye white. But if you have a spectrometer, you would see that it's not actually true white or continuous white, much like the sun, which is mostly continuously white. As a positive, they can tune the phosphors for whatever color temperature they want. As a negative, some of the UV gets past the phosphors and will continue out the front of the LED. And when the UV hits plastic, it crazes the plastic and will eventually frost and crack it. So plastic would not be an ideal option either here. So I think they chose a good option. What you need to protect that would be a large bumper. And it has, you know, a significant thickness of plastic between the glass and the outside, but it's thin plastic, about 1/3 of an inch thick or close to a centimeter. But it's hard plastic, which means if you drop this, it's almost certainly going to break. They could have used rubber bumpers around the outside if you were designing this for the workplace, which I don't think they are. The solar cell is a mixed blessing. It's an interesting idea, but I kind of think it's going to take multiple days to charge this 20 amp hour battery from scratch. Now, one thing this thing does have, which is kind of interesting, it's got the USB-C charging port to charge the battery inside, and it has a USB cable here that you could use to charge your cell phone out of. So they'll probably use the internal battery to charge your cell phone. Being 20 amp hour, most cell phones are around 5 amp hour batteries. So you could charge your cell phone up to 4 times out of this for most cell phones. That's pretty interesting. The color temperature adjust is in stages. It's just got multiple fixed color temperature adjusts, as you can see. Flashing red for emergencies on the side of a highway, solid red if you want on the side of a highway or some other emergency, and then off. I can't find any way to dim it. I tried pushing and holding, but that doesn't seem to do anything. If there's a way to dim it, I don't know what that is, and there's no manual to tell me what that is. Overall, I think it's an intriguing design. They get a decent amount of light output, a very flat field light output. Those are very big pluses. It would be nice if the case was sturdier, probably make it more expensive. The price of this guy is $79.99, but when I went to get it on Amazon, it was currently on sale, like 50 something bucks. So that's not a bad price. I'm always curious on how they build these things. So I was going to open this guy up because I'm curious. And it looks like it's sort of a clamshell design with the top part popping off. Oh, maybe it all loads through the front where the glass is. Maybe that's the case because these little clips are what hold the glass in. Okay. So it's sort of a tub with a few clips that hold the glass in place. And I'm guessing the whole light assembly lifts out. So this is indeed glass. The light diffuser is a very well done design. I was impressed at how good a job it does. The LED array is all in one PCB, which is kind of interesting. And just 4 screws holding that in. So let's pop that out. None of these screws are machine screws for ease of construction on their side. They are thread creation screws, you know, just the type you put straight into plastic. Nothing wrong with that. If you have to open it more than a few times, they will tend to get very loose on you, so that'll be problematic. Popping this open to see the batteries. They're using I think they're like 18450. I can't remember the number specifically, batteries. And they've just got a bunch of them in here. Interestingly enough, they called this 20 amp hour. On here on the battery pack is 16,800 milliamps. So I don't know if that refers to capacity or it refers to its total current output capability, 16.8 amps out maximum. If it's capacity, that conflicts with their 20 amp hour rating. That's an interesting observation. They use silicone wire in here, which is nice. That's high temperature wire because those LEDs are going to get pretty warm. Now, the interesting thing I'm observing here is there's no heat sink on the LEDs. So, yeah, it's 18650 batteries. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them inside this pack. They might all be in parallel, which would give you 3.7 volts. Yeah, it is 3.7 volts with, I don't know, these things are a couple amp hours a piece, usually like 2.7. So there's your 16.8. So I guess that capacity kind of conflicts with their 20 amp hour rating. Still a pretty large capacity pack. What that says to me is that this PC board is going to contain a constant current supply to power the LED, to feed the LEDs. I guess I have a little concern about the LEDs too, with no heat sinking, because LEDs, incandescent bulbs radiate a lot of their heat away through infrared radiation. LEDs do not tend to. It is on an aluminum backed PC board, but I don't know that that's enough. Maybe it is. I guess time will tell on that one. Other than that, the design seems good. They use premium wire inside, so that's a nice touch. It can handle high temperatures. Except for the red wire. The red wire, however, is, I think, just for this center strip. But if this whole panel gets super hot, I don't know if that's a good idea. I can't tell for sure. It feels like PVC wire. These feel definitely like silicone, which is very high temperature wire. So overall, the construction inside, okay, except that I think that the battery pack is lower capacity than they're stating. And I wish that there was a bigger heat sink on the LEDs. If this thing stayed on for any period of time, I think it's going to get pretty hot. LEDs degrade when they get hot, so you don't want them to get too hot. So that could be a problem. So here's my thoughts on the product overall. The design is adequate. It is definitely not designed for rough or tough environments, so consider your use case very carefully. The LED optical design, as far as light distribution, is outstanding. The light distribution pattern is very even and flat, which is huge for videography like I do. The battery pack capacity is probably less than the 20 amp hours they're stating on the Amazon site. And in the title, they claim it is a 20 amp hour battery pack, when in fact on the battery pack itself, it calls it 16 and change. I think that might be a little problematic. The 10,000 lumen output might be a typo, because everywhere in their specifications and in the body of the description of what this product does is 5,000 lumens, or they're just trying to get the 10,000 lumen title to get people to buy it, considering they probably won't read the fine print. That would be problematic as well. So I give it a very mixed rating. I like the light output a lot, but I think the product falls short in a bunch of other areas, and I think you should consider very strongly before spending money on this. I think the solar panel is a neat idea, and if you're out camping somewhere, this might be a great solution. It's fairly light as well, so packing it out shouldn't be too much of a problem, and you could be out multiple days and still have light. That's kind of a cool feature, and potentially charge your cell phone, also an interesting feature. However, it would be nice if it was made out of a more rugged plastic. I think that would be a big benefit. So overall, I'm sort of mixed on it. I think you should just consider very carefully if you're going to get it, if it meets your use case. Next up is an item I picked up at the Bar Z Industrial Bash just for curiosity, because I'd never seen one in person. But I paid $5 and picked up this ceramic bearing. Has ceramic balls, ceramic races. I've seen mixes before too of these, just in pictures, where there were ceramic balls and steel races. This is all ceramic. This would work well in really harsh environments where corrosion's a problem. The cage is stainless steel on it, and nothing else will corrode. It also could be used if you don't want electrical conduction between the inside and the outside. This is great isolation, because ceramics are high voltage isolators. So it's kind of a really cool thing. This is also a very big bearing. $5 for this was kind of a neat deal. I kind of wish I'd bought 2 of them, because then I might have found an application where I could use it. They're very smooth too. I didn't want to open the bag and break the seal, but I guess what the heck, right? It's just for looks. It's a pretty nice bearing, and $5 was an incredible deal. Yeah, Not a lot of play in these bearings. Very interesting find. Thought you might find it interesting as well. Next up is a used metrology tool. Stare at Toolmaker locating buttons. And I really didn't know what these were until I looked them up and saw a video on YouTube on how they're used. They're used similar to the way a tooling ball is used, in that they set a reference point on your project that you can come back to. With these guys, they come with a washer and an oversized hole in the sleeve that lets you knock them into position wherever you want them. And then you can screw them down tight and locate off of this. These are ground buttons. Pretty neat idea. Never used them before. Hopefully we'll have a project where we can use them coming up. At a minimum, they're an interesting piece of metrology history. Next up, we have a tool that I bought as a curiosity. This is the Harbor Freight Warrior brand rotary fabric cutter, material cutter. The thing's got dual safeties, so it's got a pressure safety from a squeeze perspective, also the push button. So you can't push the push button unless you're squeezing this part in, which actually makes it a little bit difficult to use, to be honest. It's got a lithium-ion battery in it, comes with a spare blade. I thought it's got an interesting shaped cutter in it. What is it? It's 10-sided, 2, 4, 6, 8, 8-sided. That's an 8-sided, so an octagon. Is that right? 2, 4, 6. Yeah, it's an octagon. And so I thought that would really help it to drag the material under it. I had a bunch of shade cloth to cut, and it only did a so-so job. This is some nearly 1/8-inch rubber, so it does cut it reasonably well. I found it was more difficult to go through some fabrics. It also can do curves, but you have to be able to hold your material taut in order for you to use it adequately. But it does cut reasonably well. I give a tear down for this, but I don't think it's worth it. It wasn't very expensive. I think it's okay. You'd be much better off buying a big name brand if you're going to use it any frequency at all. I don't use it very often. I have a bunch more shade cloth to cut for our backyard, and then I'll probably won't need to use it for quite a while. But it does cut fairly thick material. The blade's replaceable, but the part that the blade cuts against is not removable. So I guess it's sort of an expendable item. Lithium-ion cell comes with the charger, uses micro USB as the port, which is universal, so it's a 5-volt charger. So that makes it pretty easy to find a charger for it. Old cell phone chargers. Anyways, I give it a thumb sideways. It's okay, but if you're going to use it for any amount of time, I give it an eh. You really have to hold your fabric taut in order for this to work. So 2 people, and this thing works okay. 1 person, not so much. So I suspect a good portion of us keep a 6-inch scale handy a lot of the time, but 6 inches isn't very much, and I wanted something of similar accuracy. So I picked up this Mitutoyo 24-inch scale, and it's divided on one side into 32nds and 64ths, which I don't like very much. But the other side is tenths and hundredths, although the hundredths you're going to need a microscope to use, but thought it'd be nice to have a pretty handy scale around that was bigger than 6 inches, because I measure things quite often that the 6-inch ones can't handle. You can get surprisingly good accuracy out of one of these scales if you look very close with a magnifying glass and line things up. Like Mitutoyo and some of the other high-end scales are lithographically etched, so they're very accurate, the line placement. So you can start getting down to size, a portion of a line thickness. As I'm sure you're aware, I've seen plenty of times before, that I have a lot of tool holders. These are from All Industrial, and they are pretty fantastic. The size tool holder I use are CXA, and they're in $20-some range each. So every time I get one of my checks from YouTube, which isn't much, like $80, $100 kind of thing, I reinvested for quite a while. I reinvested them in tool holders just to make it really convenient, so I didn't have to constantly change out tools. And so I'm really happy with these. I don't have any of the name brand ones. This is a clone tool post. It's not an Aloris, but it works quite well. I'm pretty happy with it. but I recently got an edition I didn't have before. So what I found was this Aloris tool holder, and it was of a style that I didn't have. It's actually a Morse Taper 4 tool holder for your tool slots. So if you want to put a drill in your tool, a drill bit in your tool, you can do that and use your cross slide to drill a hole. Or other options, which is why I got it. It's got a whole bunch of options. A really nice fit. I just barely dropped that in there. So I've got some plans for this. Hopefully you'll see it in the future. There's the part number if you're looking for one. I was actually looking for a clone, but this Aloris came up as new used, and the price was too good to give up on, so I picked it up. Next up, I found this used Yuasa, used but in great shape Yuasa indexing head, and it came with a bison chuck. For the price that I paid for this, I couldn't have even gotten the bison chuck for that price, so I was pretty excited about that. It only came with 2 indexing plates, the one that's on it and one more, but no complaints here. I actually have an interesting project coming up in the future where I want to automate this, so hopefully that'll come up in the not too distant future. I'm still working on that project. The condition is okay. There is some surface corrosion on it, but in general, it's pretty decent. Very nice acquisition. Now this is a pretty small one. I think the center height's about 4 inches on this guy. You could get definitely, yeah, it's 4 inches, maybe just under. You could get a much bigger one, but I'm actually restricted. A lot of my choice in purchases is based on weight. So this one already weighs probably close to 40 pounds. Much more than that, it starts really throwing my back out. So that's why I chose to get a smaller one. Looking at the indexing head as delivered, this Yuasa has got an interesting design here. So it's got this wheel with set up in 1 degree increments, and it has this lever here that pushes the pin out rather than just having a pin you put in, which is kind of neat because I guess it could be buried like it is now behind the chuck and the chuck plate. Now, interesting about this pin, it's tapered, so it's self-aligning. So it's not just a straight pin, it is a tapered pin that goes into the hole there. So the measurements for this guy are in 10 degree increments as far as where the pinholes are, but then you can subdivide that if you need to by locking rotation right here, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, that locks rotation right there with this lock right here. This is an excellent made one. I've been looking at the Chinese made ones, actually the Taiwanese made ones, for a very long time, and was going to get one, but then this came up at a price I couldn't ignore, so I didn't. Next up we have chamfering tools, and here is a multi-flute design and a single flute design. The multi-flute I've never got to be able to use without having chatter issues. Low RPMs, high RPMs, just wants to chatter. I mean, occasionally they work, but for the majority you're struggling with them. Single flute at low RPMs seem to work pretty well. I ran across this set. It's used, this or new unused old box Weldon set with the straight through hole, and I thought, why not try this chamfering tool and see how these work. I've never used these before. I heard they're pretty easy to sharpen. You just run something through the middle and you get a new edge. Never used these, kind of curious to see if they'll work very well as a deburring tool and a chamfering tool. Anyone has an experience, I wouldn't mind the feedback, but they were a good price, so I thought, what the heck. Next up, I picked up these two beasts, probably wondering why. This is approximately a 1/2 inch boring bar right here, left-handed threading tool. You can see that these are significantly larger. You're probably wondering, I have a 14-inch lathe. What the heck do I need anything like this for? Well, hopefully you'll be able to see in an upcoming project. I'm kind of excited about it. I had to bore some, or I was asked to be able to bore some really deep holes, and chatter would be a significant problem, and I'm hoping these will be my solution. How I'm going to hold them, well, that will be the project. Next up, I have a face mill. Now this is one I already had. This was the first face mill I ever purchased. It's a Schar's, and it's got triangular inserts with a wiper head, and the inserts I have to buy from Schar's, they're hard to find. And since they're flat inserts, they tend to break pretty easily. So you got to be pretty gentle with them. Mostly use them on aluminum, but you can get a really nice finish out of them. So that's a plus. I was watching one of Steve over at Solid Rock Machine Shop's videos recently, and he was using a core alloy that he had good luck with. So I actually coughed up the bucks. They're a lot cheaper than a Sandvik or a Kennametal, but core alloy, bought a core alloy set with a face mill, and I'm kind of excited to see how well this guy will work, because I always wondered if when I get mediocre performance out of a face mill, it's because I buy the inexpensive arbors and inexpensive face mills, you know, made in China or Taiwan. And maybe not, maybe it has nothing to do with that. This is one of the new style inserts. It's an 8-way insert on it. So both sides have 4 cutting faces. And it's a negative rate seat to make it strong, with an insert that becomes positive rate because of the large angle on it. And I'm hoping I'll get good results with this. This was about $300, I think, the set, so it was not cheap. But I'm hoping that I will get some good finishes and some good results out of this moving forward. Something I didn't know is that a lot of these inserts that are multi-sided actually have numbers pressed into the top. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, so you know where you left off. I never noticed that until a while ago, and I looked at one of my face mills that uses inserts like that and noticed that, holy cow, they're all over the place. When I increment them one, I'm not going to know where I'm at. But this one will start with 1 facing out on all of them. As you can see, this is a 45-degree insert. You can see close up here, that's a negative rake, leans down seat for the insert. But once you put the insert in it, the design of the insert's got such a significant lip that it becomes positive rake, which on a small milling machine like my 9x49 is a plus, because it takes less horsepower to get the same cut. Now, I heard all negative rake designs can get a much better surface finish potentially, but hopefully this one will be somewhat comparable. Among other things, it has a wiper built into it. So hopefully we'll get a nice smooth finish on a milling cut with this guy. So these inserts are steel and stainless steel. K is cast iron, so these are not for that. And that's it. Just kidding. We'll go over and take a look and see how this guy cuts. 20 thousandths depth of cut. Start with a slow feed rate. Very slow feed rate. Remember, there's a 45-degree chamfer on this tool. It's not even struggling a little bit. So it's making a little bit of chatter noise. Let's turn up the feed rate. Oh, no problem. Turned up the feed rate a little bit. It's getting a better surface finish this time, less chatter. It's just peeling that stuff, the metal off of there. I believe I might have been running this at too low an RPM first time around. Turned up the feed and the RPM. So we're going to try a 25,000th depth of cut, and we're going to try it slower at 500 RPM, see what happens. I'm going to try a bigger bite this time, and I'm going to try and increase the feed rate a little, which means bigger bite per tooth. Come. Slightly higher RPM. So this is just a piece of cold rolled steel here, or hot rolled steel. I'm not sure, actually it might be hot rolled steel. So I wasn't expecting a brilliant surface finish out of it. I was hoping for a little bit more of a shiny surface finish, but it is taking material off beautifully. Now it looks like it likes higher RPM, you get a better surface finish. So this last go, we did get a pretty nice surface finish. That is the kind of finish I was looking for. So that was a pretty high feed rate and about 800 RPM. So that skipped the chatter, but got a nice shiny surface finish. So on the last go, there's the surface finish. It's not perfect. It's the direction it goes changes how nice the cut is on it, which is interesting. And this one and this one are the same direction, but this one was definitely a shinier finish than the other ones. There's a slight little depth difference, so maybe my head needs to be trammed in again between passes. But all in all, I'm pretty happy. It's not any magic bullet solution, but I think it's pretty good. And although the inserts have 8 edges, they are very expensive. They are $24 a piece. So that make them $3 an edge. Still not super cheap. But so far so good. We'll have to try it on some other materials, see if we can get some better performance out of this. That'll be it for this quick tool review. Hope you find it useful. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.